Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Sid's Reviews. My name is Dale, and today I'm going to pose a question to you. When you're listening to your favorite movie or sports or even favorite TV show on your big flat screen or home theater projector, what do you do for sound? Do you still use just the speakers out of the regular projector or TV screen? Do you use a sound bar, the little bar there in front of the TV, to enhance your sounding pleasure? Or if you really want that movie theater experience or get the most out of your sports and entertainment watching, you need a home theater receiver. Let me tell you why. Let's get into it. We're going to be talking about the Yamaha RX-A 1080 7.2 home theater receiver. Let's go. Okay, so ever since I've been into hi-fi audio and video, the home theater receiver has always been a must-have component for me. I mean, going back to like probably the early to mid 90s, I've always had a home theater receiver in my repertoire. In fact, I think I remember starting with a Pioneer home theater receiver. It wasn't even 5.1, it was just like Dolby Pro Logic that came with it. Didn't have any HDMI ports, no network features, any of that stuff. You could just hook 5 speakers up to it, and then to hook up the TV was pretty much S-Video or RCAs even, in fact. And then eventually everything started to come around to it. So obviously the advent of like Dolby Digital, then DTS, then Dolby True HD, and now Dolby Atmos. I mean, I've just had so many home theater receivers. I probably tried counting before this video started taping. I think I've had around 10 of them. So I've had all the brands. I've had Pioneer, I've had Marantz, I've had Denon, I've had Yamahas. I think I even had an NAD in there for a little bit. So this one here, the Yamaha RX-A 1080, is my latest one. Obviously, I just got it probably 3 months ago. Now, this is an older Avantage receiver. Even though it's the latest model in Canada, this model actually came out in 2018. It is part of the Avantage line, middle of the road, I'd say, because they also have the 3080 and the 2080, I believe, and then they also have an 880, a 780. So as you can see, this is about the middle of the line, but the Avantage line represents the upper echelon line of the Yamaha receivers. So what you get into this is a 7.2 home theater receiver. It has all the latest codecs in it, so obviously Dolby Atmos, DTS-X. This one, the power in it's about 110 watts per channel on it. It weighs about 33 pounds, so it's actually built very well. It's quite a beast in there. And the pricing right now, the pricing in Canada for this one is about $1,600 brand new, although because it's an outgoing model, I believe you can get it for better deals elsewhere, probably around $1,400 or $1,500 you could find it. And in the US, I believe if you could find them right now, because the new ones are coming out, which I'll speak about later, this model retails for about $1,200 US. It has all the latest connectivities. It obviously has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It has ARC technology, eARC technology in it. It has all the latest video and audio codecs. It has Dolby Atmos. It has Dolby Vision. It has DTS-X, it has MusicCast, which is Yamaha's own proprietary built-in music app to stream services. And it just packs a lot of features and great build quality for the price, I think. Okay, let's go over the front of this receiver and the controls on it. So first, as you can see, there's a very large screen in here which displays all your information, which input you're on, what's the source, audio source that it's currently displaying on there, and the volume there is on the side, and right here it displays all the speakers that you currently hooked up to it. And I really like this screen. It's nice and big, it's very clear and concise. You could also adjust the brightness of it as well. And to the right here, as you can see, is the main volume. So it goes up and down. Very nice feel too on the volume knob. This isn't, it probably is plastic, but it's definitely not cheap feeling at all. It feels premium on there. And then on the left hand side here is the input selector on there. And again, this has a very nice feel to it. Love it here when you change it, and you can just feel it's very tactile and has a good feel on it. This here is obviously the power button. Then down here you have more displays here, so you just hit that, and as you can see, it's hidden behind here, and all your other displays here for changing menu options and changing scenes. Connections here, there's a USB connection. This is to plug in the calibration mic. Stereo for your headphones here if you want to plug in headphones, and then there's auxiliary inputs there. A little disappointing there's no front HDMI port there. I know on some previous versions of these receivers they do have an HDMI port, but they decided to not put it here, so that's a little bit disappointing. But otherwise I do like the clean front display of that. I love the way that just goes up there to hide all those buttons there behind there. It just has a very nice and clean look in front of it, and as you can see, it's a very beefy unit. Okay, just to quickly show you guys the back of this receiver, and as usual there's a lot of inputs here. So as you see, there's a couple of antennas here. One's for Wi-Fi, the other one's for Bluetooth. HDMI out, so it has two here including ARC, and it does do ER because it did get a update on there. So actually three HDMI outs. This one's for a zone out, so in a second zone. Otherwise there's 7 HDMI ins. What's nice here, a phono input, so if you have a record player, want to hook that up, you could do that. A lot of AV receivers do not have that in there. And then a bunch of legacy analog audio RCA ins. You got some video ins. You even have a couple of component video ins if you have that. All your pre-outs are here as well, so if you want to hook it up to more separate receivers as separate amps, sorry. 2 subwoofers, center out, you could hook up radio here. Then here's all your very nice, actually beefy speaker terminals, which I like. So you got your surround back, present speakers, actually it's for Dolby Atmos for the ceiling, your center, and then your 2 right and left channels, and also a removable AC socket, couple of trigger outputs, and then the RS-232C. Okay, as always guys, I do love to show the remotes that come with these components, and as you can see with this Yamaha receiver, this remote, let me tell you, there's a lot of buttons on it, and I could see how some people could say that this is a bit big and overwhelming on it. But let me tell you, once you get used to it, these buttons are very functional. This remote does have a great feel to it. It's not a cheap plasticky type remote. This thing definitely has some weight and substance to it, and it controls absolutely everything on the receiver, and it also controls things that you hook up your HDMI components to. So whether you have a Blu-ray or an Apple TV hooked up to it, this will control those components as well in it without having to set up anything at all. Just plug it in the HDMI at the back of the receiver, and then this remote control can control those components as well. So that's a nice feature. And one other great feature here, I'll show it to you guys, is that this remote lights up at night. Isn't that great? A lot of other remotes do not light up, and it's very frustrating in the dark, but this one does light up, and I think that's a great feature as well. Not many components do that. So given the size of this receiver, and which is seemingly the endless options and features that's built into this unit, you would almost think that setting up this receiver would be this task that's just like overwhelming and enormous, and takes a lot of fiddling inside and adjustments with the speakers and the size of your room. Well, let me tell you, that couldn't be further from the truth. This receiver is very easy to set up. All you do is plug in the supplied YPOW microphone into the slot right here, and just look at the screen and just go through each function of it and just place the microphone. You could place it in one spot in your prime sitting position, or it could be calibrated, I believe, up to about 8 different positions within your seating area of your home theater space. And the results that it gives for the sound of everything, I could tell you, was very good. For my setup, it worked out really well. It calibrated all the sizes of the speakers, the distances to where you're listening. It did all the curves and reverbs for the sound on it. It did all the crossover points as well, and it did a very good job. The only setting that I did after calibration that I tweaked was I just set the level input of each speaker up a notch. So if it was at 0 or 1 or -1, I just like cranking everything up a little bit on my system. So I put all the speakers up to, like, I think +5, so I think it goes up to 10. So I think I put them all up to like 5 out of 10, and I just go from there on it, because I just like having that extra headroom, I guess, into my speakers for sound. And after calibration, you're pretty much done. You're ready to listen to this system. So now when I'm going to be comparing the sound and features of it, I'm going to be comparing it to a receiver that I had for a couple months very recently and decided to return in favor of this. And that one is the Denon X4500 receiver. So I'll when I explain to the sound and features of this, I'll be comparing it to that. So let's get into it. Okay, so before I purchased this receiver, I did manage to get a good deal on a Denon higher-end receiver, the X4500 receiver, which retails for, I believe, over $2,000 in Canada. So it's about $600 more than this current unit, and it does have a little bit more power into it, but I wouldn't say it has any extra features in it at all. This thing matches it almost spec for spec as far as all the streaming features, the codecs, HDMI ports, all that stuff is in it. But I believe that one is a 9.2 channel receiver, whereas this one is 7.2 channels. So you do get a couple of extra speakers that you want to hook up if you have the space and room for it. And it does have a little bit more power per channel for it, but otherwise it's the same. So I had the Denon receiver for, like I said, a few months in it, and I thought it was pretty good, but there's a couple things that really nagged at me that make me want to change into something different and go back to a Yamaha. One of the things was that no matter how I calibrated it or anything, the voices coming through, like the dialogue of movies, seemed to be thin and veil and just not very clear at all through the Denon. No matter what adjustments I did to it, I couldn't get it to sound right. The only way to adjust it would be to crank up the level input of the center speaker, and that's not something that I wanted to get into. I thought that the receiver should have a dialogue level adjust, which it does not in the Denon receiver, and I could just never get it to sound right. The other thing that kind of annoyed me about the receiver was the app on it. Now, the app to me on these receivers is very important because I use my phone a lot, and I like to use the app versus the remote on it to adjust, certain settings. If I want to, adjust the sound or the tweaking of any little settings, I like to use the app on it. Plus, I also use the app for streaming music from my phone into the receiver on it. So the app is very important to me. And the one that Denon, quite frankly, it's kind of a mess on it. I just didn't think it was very intuitive app, and I just couldn't get it to work the way that I was used to getting it. So I ended up returning the Denon receiver, and I got back into the Yamaha receiver. Now, I haven't had a Yamaha receiver in about 8 years, since I believe the RX-A1020. So as you can see, now we're up to the 1080. So there's quite a few revisions onto this one, and I was glad I went back into the Yamaha. Easy to set up. Once you get into it, then I got all that functionality back that I was missing from the Denon receiver. So the voices, the sound on here is exactly the Yamaha sound that I know and remember. Everything's very clear, very punchy on it. The voices come through very clear on it. There's even a dialogue level adjust should you need it, which you don't need it into here. It just, to me, it does voices better than the Denon on here. And the app on here, on the Music Cast and the regular Yamaha app for adjusting the receiver and for streaming your music for that, to me, it's second to none. I haven't seen a better one yet. I heard that the NAD Direct Music Live app is very good as well. But to me, the Yamaha one here, this is the one that I know and love, and this thing is great for going through music. You could change tracks, you could, it just gives you more information and access, and it's more intuitive than the Denon app that I just had before. Okay, so the sound on this Yamaha receiver, in my opinion, is very good. I think that it is great for both movies and music on here, on this unit. Now, for movies, whether whether you're listening to sports or a movie with like a lot of drama in it, where there's a lot of dialogue, I guess, for it. This is a great receiver for it. But where it really shines, I think, is where, you know, the big spectacle movies, say your Star Wars or your Marvel Avengers and stuff, you get every explosion with a real whop into it, and even the subtle details that come around, say if like you know, there's like bullets bouncing around and stuff like that, you could really get a sense of, you know, it's over here and over there and stuff like that, with really some fine details. And one good thing is, no matter how loud and crazy some scenes are with a lot of explosions and things going on, this receiver never loses its composure when it's trying to portray that type of soundtrack to you. And even when there's a lot of action and stuff going on, when people are talking and shouting in between all that action, the voices really come through on this, really clear and crisp and not thin at all on it. And I really appreciate that into a receiver. Now for music, music to me is less important, but I do use it. The better the receiver, I think I use the music more on the receiver. On this one, the Yamaha receiver, it's what I've been, what I've remembered from Yamahas from the past. This thing does music very well. There's 2-channel mode, 7-channel mode, if that's your thing. Everything just comes through with a real live sense of music into it. Of course, it's not as, you know, something I wouldn't never replace it with my Iota VX 2-channel system for, like, you know, serious listening, but for just, you know, having fun and just putting on some music onto your phone, this thing is absolutely great. And I do love cycling through all the different DSP parameter, all the sound parameters on it too, just playing with them. I don't really put it on, like, you know, those halls, and, you know, they have a hall in Munich, hall in Vienna, and club and cellar. Those are okay for, like, you know, for just checking out for like 2 minutes or something like that. But for most channel listening, for 2-channel or the 7-channel stereo, I think this thing sounds really great for it, and I do appreciate that. So kudos to Yamaha for really providing a receiver that sounds both good with movies and music to it. I also wanted to touch on that before purchasing this receiver, I did purchase the new line of Yamaha receivers, although they didn't have the Avantage line yet, but I did purchase the RX-6A, I believe, for it, which is their highest end line of the entry-level receivers on it. So the power was about the same as this one, but the build quality is not up to the Avantage line, so you are kind of missing that. But it did have 7.2 channels, did have Dolby Atmos, all the latest codecs and features into it, and I think it had every feature that this thing has, but the build quality wasn't quite there on it. Now let me talk to you about the build quality and why I did return it. Number one, to be honest, I don't like the new look of the new models of the Yamaha receivers, whether it's the new Avantage line or their entry-level line. They both look almost the same. I'm sure the build quality on the Avantage line is going to be better than the entry-level line on it. But to me, it doesn't look as good as this. I know it's kind of rounded edges and it has one big dial and one small dial to change the inputs, but on that unit, it felt cheaper. The display was a lot smaller into this corner here, and if you're not directly in line with the display on the receiver when you're watching, you know, in your home theater setup, you're not going to see the display on that thing. Like for me, I'm sitting kind of on the side of the receiver, and I could still see this display on there. But on those new lines of Yamahas, I could not see what was going on over there, so I didn't like that part of it. The other part of it was, it just looked cheaper to me. Now, perhaps the Avantage line is going to correct those issues and have the build quality that the regular Avantage line, I hope they do, but still the look is going to be the same on it. So I guess it's all a matter of taste. I like this look, even though it looks a bit kind of boxy, but to me it looks beefy and, you know, kind of what I want in a receiver. And I do like the large display, which I didn't like on those newer models. So, okay. Just to go quickly over the pros and cons of this receiver. So I think I touched on most of it already in the video, but the pros, obviously, I like the sound. It has big punchy sound for music, very good for, I mean, big punchy sound for movies, but also it does music very well. So that's good. And it also has a clear dialogue. So even when the movies get really busy with lots of explosions and things going on, you could still hear the dialogue very clearly. And even if you think you're missing a little bit, it does have dialogue adjustment in there, which I really appreciate. Like I said, music sounds great in 7-channel and 2-channel as well. I love the remote on this issue. Like I said, this remote lights up. It's very functional. It controls other devices as well and has a very good feel to it. If not, maybe it's a little overwhelming with a lot of buttons on it. I do like the Yamaha app as well, their music cast and their regular app for adjusting any settings that you need to in this receiver. And it's also great for streaming music. You can see the album, you can see, it just does everything. Like, the app is absolutely unbelievable. I think it's one of the best apps for a receiver out there, home theater receiver. And the build quality I like. I think this is a big beefy unit. They put a lot of thought into it. There's an extra foot in the middle here to control the stability here of the entire unit. This thing's built like a tank, let's face it. And I do love the display on it. I like the clean look in the front. The cons for this unit, you know what, I can't really say too much. If anything, could be a little pricey. I mean, 1,600 Canadian is a lot of money. When I first purchased these Avantage receivers back about 10 years ago, I know it's 10 years ago, but this unit, the 1020, was, I believe, $1,000. So they've increased the price quite a bit on these things. But like I said, if you could find it on sale right now, I think they're about $1,400 or probably $1,000 Canadian. For sure, I think that's more in line with what it should be. Okay, just to wrap things up on my thoughts on this receiver, look, when it comes to home theater receivers, there are a lot of options out there. And so, I mean, you got Denon, you got Onkyo, you got the Yamahas, you got NAD. I mean, there's so many that you could choose from. But to me, I keep coming back to the Yamaha sound. I do like the functionality of it. I do like that it's easy to set up. I do like that it sounds good both with movies and music. And their app on here, I believe, second to none. And I really like the remote on this thing. So there's so many positives with this thing, and there's so many things that could annoy you with home theater receivers because there's so many things that it does. So it has to do a lot of things right. Like, let's face it, has to sound good, has to look good, has to function good, has to set up good. And I think for the most part, Yamaha nails these right more so often than not. So my conclusion is this is a great mid to high level receiver, and I know the new models are coming up, and I do want to check out the Avantage line once they come out here in Canada. I'm going to check that out. But for now, this is a great receiver. If you like the look of this one, hopefully you could still find one and they're available, and I'll put some links down in the description below. So that's it. What do you think of my review of the Yamaha RX-A 1080 home theater receiver? Leave your comments and questions and stuff like that below. Look, guys, I've been doing this now for about 2 months, and I know I'm still new to this, but this has been so much fun for me, and I love having the comments and questions down below from you guys. Give me a thumbs up, and make sure you like and subscribe if you like my videos. And let's keep it rolling. I'll have another review of another component coming up shortly, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.